All right, good evening. There you go. I'm always excited to see the State Theater filled up, whether it's for a fun movie or a program like this, so welcome. I want to start off by thanking Fayette Alliance. Brittany mentioned Lexington's Preservation and Growth Management Program. That was the longest acronym we could come up with. And you all were really an integral partner in getting this piece of legislation through, and you all will learn more about it. And I really want to emphasize how potentially transformative this piece of legislation is. Those of you in this room probably know that land use policy is one of our most divisive issues here in this city. And this piece of legislation, with good faith efforts and partnerships from Fayette Alliance and other partners, I think we're able to create a new paradigm, a new way of looking at how do we build Lexington's future. So I'm really excited about that, and I'm very grateful for your partnership in that. I'm going to make a quick assumption about the people in this room. You all are probably all city nerds, right? I'm going to guess that you all are passionate about housing, you are passionate about transportation, you're passionate about STRs and ADUs, and some of you probably even care about how many stairwells should be in any apartment building, right? And so I think it's more than appropriate that for our keynote speech, we have Ray Delahanty, the creator of CityNerd, a video series that focuses on transportation, housing, and urbanism overall. In the 5 years of its existence, it has garnered hundreds of thousands of subscribers and tens of millions of views. And Ray brings not just his passion and his nerdiness to this show, but also 15 years of experience in planning, in project management, and traffic engineering. So I'm really excited to hear this conversation, and let's give him a big Lexington welcome, Ray Delahanty.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much for the introduction, Vice Mayor Wu. Again, Ray, I think you can tell all these people are really excited to see you.
Yeah, I don't fully understand it. So.
They had to sit through listening to me talk about local issues that we're advocating for. But again, we're just so excited that you're here with us.
You showed maps up there, so I was pretty psyched about it.
Well, again, if you're a follower of Fayette Alliance, and hopefully you will be from now on, Ray, you'll continue to see lots of those good maps that we're so fond of putting out into the world. Well, again, we're so grateful to have you in Lexington. Tell us a little bit about you and how you became the creator of CityNerd.
I mean, it's kind of a pandemic origin story, I guess. Yeah, so I got my Master of Urban and Regional Planning back in the 2009, and then I embarked on a career working in planning in the private and the public sector. I worked for the state DOT in Oregon, which was an experience, and for the county there, and then I moved into consulting, which I enjoyed. It allows you to work with a lot of different clients on a lot of different types of planning and engineering projects. But then the pandemic hit. Working from home was kind of driving me crazy. During my planning career, so when you're consulting, RFPs come out, requests for proposals for projects that cities or counties or the state wants you to work on. And a lot of times they aren't that inspiring. And I had other ideas of things that I wanted to talk about. So I kind of kept a notebook of stuff that I thought, maybe I'll start a blog at some point, or now it would be a Substack probably, or a Medium. I don't know, it was Medium for a while. I don't know, I can't even keep up with it anymore. But during the pandemic, I was my job was kind of driving me crazy. And I was thinking, what if I take some time off and go on sabbatical, and then I can work on some of those ideas. But also during the pandemic, I had started watching YouTube more than I probably should, and maybe there are others of you out there who responded to the pandemic the same way. And I thought, I could actually make videos about the stuff I want to talk about. That would actually be better because the stories I want to tell have a strong visual component. I like to talk about visual examples of infrastructure or maps or whatever. And so I said, yeah, I'll make a couple of videos and see how it goes. And like, I don't know, I think I had made 2 videos and I got an email from YouTube saying, somebody subscribed to your channel. And I was like, what? somebody wanted more of that. So I was kind of off and running then, and like once the algorithm starts going to work, it kind of doesn't stop, and then before I knew it, I kind of had a new job. So that's kind of the origin story.
I think that's amazing, and you've clearly resonated with people all over the country. I saw that you hit the 400,000 subscriber mark, which is an exciting milestone.
Yeah, that was fun.
Well, I'm curious, were you surprised when you heard from us in Lexington and we said we want to talk to you about coming here?
Not too surprised, but yeah, it is usually because I do this. I don't know, not during the winter, partly because I'm just busy with holiday stuff, but also like when I go to a city, I like to film, and so I hope for good weather. Actually, Lexington wasn't that accommodating the last few days, unfortunately. But I did get one really good day in of exploring and filming. So yeah, usually it's a larger city, but I've done events in smaller and mid-sized cities too. So the request for me to like come and do a thing come from all over. I went to Canada twice last year, so I don't know, like nothing surprises me too much.
Well, that's good. We weren't too out of the blue. And it's your first trip to Lexington. So as a first-time visitor, I'm curious what your expectations were for your visit. Did you know much about Lexington? And if so, or if you didn't know much about Lexington, when you started to do research, were there things that you were looking forward to?
You think I researched before I came here? No, well, so because I do a lot of videos that are like where I analyze something and I create a top 10 list or whatever, and so like a lot of times I'll set a threshold of, okay, I'm only going to look at cities or metro areas that are like 1 million and up or something like that. But sometimes I lower that threshold a bit, and so Lexington, like I have like kind of looked at Lexington, and I think we might talk about it later, but it has shown up in at least one of my previous videos, so we can talk about that. But I mean, just as like a human existing in the United States and living on the West Coast, my impressions of Lexington are college basketball that's often better than some NBA teams. Because I kind of think, well, Lexington isn't really like a big league city. Well, no, it kind of is, because you've got very, I don't know, like honestly the best program in the history of men's college basketball, right? So, no, it's true. I saw this. I saw a top 10 because I follow like sports stuff or whatever, and somebody had a top 10 list just a couple of days ago, which college programs have produced the most NBA players in history, and it was Kentucky by a mile. It was like, I think UCLA was second. So there's that, like bourbon, which I'm not like a huge drinker, but I do like old fashions. So
come to the right place.
So bourbon, and then horses, right?
That's
kind of what you know about Lexington coming here if you don't do like a lot of research first. So those were my impressions coming in.
Well, we have a basketball game tonight, but I'm really glad it's not here because Ray may have gone to Rep Arena instead. But you've been in town. You got in late Saturday night, so unfortunately missed the best of our weather. But what is your favorite thing you've experienced? And, well, let's start with that. What's your favorite thing you've experienced so far on your visit?
Yeah, I don't even want to say like a particular place or location as much as because I'm staying downtown, and so I looked at the weather forecast like, oh, I better see as much as I can on Sunday. Like it's kind of on the chilly side, but it was dry all day, and it was dry and clear and good for like shooting pictures and video and stuff. And so really like what impressed me right away was like it really is very walkable, at least in the inner core that kind of surrounding the downtown area, and that manifests in a couple ways. It doesn't have, like there aren't any freeways, right? You don't have freeways in the middle. I just made a video about this. It actually comes out on YouTube tomorrow. I already put it up on Nebula, but I made a video about, I don't know, like urban freeways that are kind of the most damaging to their cities. And nearly every US city of any size has, I don't know, like when they planned the interstate system, said, oh yeah, let's put it right through the middle of the city, or multiple freeways right through the middle of the city. And that doesn't exist here, right? The interstates, you have to go outside of the city proper to access the interstates. But that kind of manifests as a quieter walking environment with less kind of like freeway-minded drivers driving around, people who are racing toward the nearest interchange. And maybe all of your experiences are different, but I got the sense that, oh yeah, this is a fairly peaceful, pleasant place to walk from like neighborhood to neighborhood without a lot of like traffic barriers in between. So that was kind of like my favorite thing that I experienced that first day.
I think that's a really good perspective. I think it's something that we probably take for granted. In a lot of ways, there was an effort to put a freeway through the core that was fought off. And I think that we're so fortunate as a community that it was. And again, I think it's something often that we take for granted probably because we've all been to communities. We were talking today with Ray about this exact issue, and Louisville is an example of downtowns downtowns that are intersected by freeways and how different that makes a core.
The interchange just on like the east side of downtown Louisville is just, it's so ginormous.
Yeah,
it's huge.
So yeah, I think it's good. It's helpful, when we have folks come in from out of town to remember these things that we have been fortunate to avoid, and how much they really do impact our day-to-day living and our experience, not only for us that are community, residents and community members, but for visitors. So I think that's really helpful to know.
By the way, no shade on Louisville. By the way, like Louisville's great. I know there are probably a few people from there.
We talked a little bit about our historic rivalry, but we were also really excited to see that there were folks from Louisville and Cincinnati who were registered to attend tonight. So I just want to say thank you to them too for coming to Lexington and hearing more about the dynamic of our urban area as well. And I think you can really shed light on how that differs from other cities.
Did anyone come from further than Louisville? No.
Yes, I see a hand. Columbus.
Oh, nice.
Well, welcome. Well, we're so glad you're here.
Shout it out.
Yeah. All right, well, let's go ahead and dig into one of the most important land use issues here in Lexington, and that is our urban service boundary. So you've obviously heard about that today already, both from kind of the issues that I touched on and also Vice Mayor Wu's comments. And you're from Oregon, where we know since the 70s, urban growth boundaries, as y'all call them, are mandated for all metro areas, unlike here, where it's just Lexington and Fayette County. Lexington became the first North American city to establish our USB in 1958, and most other cities in the country, in some way or another, really have modeled their growth boundaries off of ours. And so, as Vice Mayor Wu mentioned, our council just adopted the first ever codified and data-driven process for expanding the urban service boundary, or for evaluating when and how we might expand it in the future. Can you tell us a little bit about how that process works in Oregon?
Yeah. So like you said, the whole program of the growth management and the land conservation and planning framework is statewide. Yeah, and that was Governor Tom McCall in like 1970, 71, and kind of importantly, and I think that echoes here as well. It was a time where people in broad parts of the political spectrum came together for a common idea, right? It was co-sponsored by one of the legislators was a Portland Democrat, a lawyer, and the other chief sponsor was, and I forget what his day job was, but he was from Eastern Oregon, from like what we would consider a very red area now, and they, that urban service boundaries or urban growth boundaries, they have a lot to offer to people in a lot of parts of the political spectrum. So kind of a child of, kind of like the 60s federal push for like the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, NEPA. It's kind of along the same lines. So urban growth boundaries were established, particularly in Portland, where it's a metropolitan area with a central city and something like 40 suburbs that have to work together. It's managed by the Metropolitan Planning Organization there. They kind of function as a regional government as well. They have elected councilors that are elected in different districts around the metropolitan region. And so the UGB gets revisited every time Metro has to update their regional land use and transportation plan and look at, kind of what you showed earlier, like they do like a population forecast and a housing needs assessment. It's like how much additional housing do we need in like the 20 or 25-year planning horizon. And so every 4 years, there's a cycle of bringing together staff and elected officials from all these different jurisdictions to figure out where the growth can or should go, and where the urban growth boundary should be expanded into current rural zoned land. And it's always kind of a fractious time because there are competing viewpoints on which cities should grow based on like what kind of employment they offer, like how hot the job market is, how hot the housing market is, and then on the other side of the equation is what kind of rural or agricultural land would you be expanding into, and just by chance, like the western suburbs of Portland, which is where like Intel and a bunch of high-tech firms are, also happens to be the place that has the highest value agricultural land. And so there's always an intense battle over, how much should we expand an urban growth boundary in Hillsborough, where Intel is located, and just beyond the boundary, there's some of the most productive wine country in the whole Western U.S. So there's a lot of data involved as far as like the value of the farmland and where the growth pressures are, and then it's very political as well. But it's all convened kind of at the regional government level.
And I think, that's a helpful perspective for us too, that, it's controversial everywhere. And, like you said, that these conversations that we have about growth it can be very divisive. I think, we're excited for this new program to ensure that the conversation that we have is led by the data that you mentioned. I know that, our planning staff and others, looked at what Oregon was doing to have these conversations and how, that might help inform our own local conversations. And I think it's interesting too, Lexington, we're biased, of course, but we feel we're very unique. We have this, we have these incredible soils that are some of, the best in the world for growing, raising horses and cattle and crops. And it's interesting to think of, that a very similar situation somewhere like Oregon, but there it's wine country. And so you have all these interesting interests you're trying to protect. But a lot of it comes back to the soils. We talked today about soil maps, and that's something that Oregon does too, and kind of looking at all the concentrations of where you grow and why. Based on your experience and all of that knowledge, how do you think urban service boundaries impact communities, especially as it relates to development and transit?
Yeah, I mean, it's at the regional level. Again, Metro, the MPO, they're in charge of overseeing this the UGB and any changes, but also there are land use and transportation planning agency at the regional level as well. So, one of the discussions you have is, okay, we really don't want to grow out, right? We don't want to grow out. We need to be able to densify and grow vertically, and so that always has to go hand in hand with the regional transportation plan. And so, in areas where there's high demand and higher housing prices, like the western suburbs, that's actually the second place that light rail went. The original line went from Portland to Gresham to the east, but then the second line, I think, opened in 1998, I think. And so that was the western extension to Hillsborough. And so that's been operating for about 28 years now. And if you go out there, if you take the blue line out to Hillsborough, you'll see several nodes along the way. And then you're in the suburbs. You can be like 10, 15 miles out from downtown Portland as you get close to the big Intel Ronwar Acres campus. And they'll have places like Orenco Station, which is it's in Hillsborough, which has a lot of single-family zoning, but it also has very good density around the light rail stations. And so I think you'll see in downtown Beaverton, in Orenco, in downtown Hillsborough, you'll see 8 and 10-story multifamily right around the stations, mixed-use areas with grocery stores, so that people can live there. And a lot of them drive sometimes, but probably not as often, right? Because they can take the light rail to get to their place of employment in a lot of cases, and the places they live have been intentionally built so that there are places to walk to where you can shop, where you can dine out, where they have services, and so that's kind of the way that planning like high capacity or higher service level transit lines. It kind of goes hand in hand with that land use piece of solving the problem of, well, yeah, if we're trying not to expand the urban growth boundary, then we have to figure out ways to densify, and that kind of gives you a framework to do it.
Yeah, I think that is a really important piece. I think that's something that's really important to all the people. I'm going to speak for all of you. Most of the people in this room is that question of, as we think about not wanting to grow, we say we want to grow up and not out. And then, inherently there can be these challenges with doing that and kind of bringing people along, even though people in this community are very passionate about maintaining our urban service boundary. As that process was happening, because it sounds like, that is a lot farther along as far as the transit-oriented development piece. As that was happening, were there challenges in bringing people along with that, or?
Yeah, there always are.
Okay.
always.
I think that's important to remember too.
Yeah, because not everybody agrees. Like, some people prefer to live in a lower density, single-family housing zoned type of environment, and they don't want to take transit. It's not part of the lifestyle that they want to live. And like that's okay. Like people are free to make up their own mind about like the kind of life they want to live. But I think it's important that people have the opportunity, that they have choices, right? Like you don't have choices if everything's designed so that you have to drive everywhere and you live in a low density environment where it's hard to walk places that you want to go. That's not really, to me, that's not really freedom, right? That's kind of a little bit the opposite. And so yeah, not everybody's going to be on board, but kind of what I hope to do, like with my channel, is to grow the constituency of people who see the value in having all those kinds of choices as far as how to get around and the type of places they want to live, so that it's kind of like what you showed up on the screen as far as the housing needs, right? What are you missing in your city? We put places that are affordable and that let people economize on not only housing but transportation as well. We should have those options in our cities.
I love that framing of it, that framing of choices and how important choices and the diversity of types of both housing and transit. And I think that that is a great frame for having the more controversial conversations that we have as a community about, about zone changes and housing development and figuring out how to tackle the transit problems that we have, that it can really be about choices. You had the chance to explore some neighborhoods in Lexington and a lot of different probably types of development, I would say, even just from your brief explorations. Were there any places here in Lexington that stood out to you as good examples of that kind of dense, kind of walkable, urban types of development that we're advocating for?
Yeah, I mean, there aren't that many locations that I came across that I would say have like a really high level of urban density. Probably mostly a little bit downtown, but then over by the university as well. But I kind of one thing that I love about visiting cities is, especially because I've often researched them in advance as part of a video I've done, I get to kind of ground truth what I saw in the data. And so like the one video that I know for sure Lexington came up in, I made a video about, and this is like kind of one of my most popular genres of video is affordable urbanism, right? Places where you don't have to pay a ton of money, but you still have good walkability and you have some transit and maybe good bikeability too, right? But you don't have to pay like New York prices or like San Francisco prices to get it. And when I did the analysis, and I did this at the zip code level, I often do it at like the whole city level, but I got a data set that had where I could do median rent by zip code, and then I could do like walk score and transit score and stuff like that by zip code, and then just have like a huge list of like literally like thousands of zip codes and generate like a metric. And Lexington came up in the top 10. And so like, I don't remember the zip code number, but it's basically most of the central part of the city and a lot of the South Hill area. And so it's really interesting to see, okay, was that right? Because it's really hard to tell just from like Google Maps or like Street View or something like that. Like, what does it feel like to walk around places like that? And yeah, definitely, yeah, if you walk around like South Hill, not just the obvious places near the university where there's higher rise housing, right? But even the more historic areas of South Hill and downtown Lexington, like the design, like the typologies of the residential structures, like they're not on large lots, right? They're fairly closely spaced. So I found that really interesting as far as, I don't know, like the density of urban form in inner neighborhoods in a city of this size. That's probably where I felt like the most like, this has the kind of urban density that I think of when I think of walking around a city.
Yeah, and I think, that goes into this next piece of topic. I mean, we're really talking about infill and redevelopment really kind of throughout this conversation tonight. But I think talking about a historic downtown neighborhood that people feel really passionate about and should. It's an incredible area and it's walkable and really all the things that you just said. I think that's raised this issue here in Lexington. And again, I think you hit on the fact that this exists everywhere, this tension of how do we continue to densify in our core areas while also making sure that we preserve our neighborhoods and build in context of our existing established neighborhoods, to keep everyone's quality of life high. And so we hear a lot about YIMBYs, which is yes in my backyard, and NIMBYs, which is not in my backyard. I'm sure you all are very familiar with those terms. And like anything, I think that there are a lot of nuances to what people believe and why. But I've seen a lot about this new emerging identity of Quimby, which is quality in my backyard, that essentially that rather than supporting all new development, no matter what, just to get units on the ground, we support the type of neighborhoods that, are in density that's in context with surrounding areas, that you're doing this sort of gentle, incremental density increases and things like that in ways that works with the community and serves the existing neighborhoods. How do you think that we can begin to bridge that gap between NIMBYs and YIMBYs and continue to build consensus around how we densify our urban areas?
Yeah, and I'm just gonna note, like, I hadn't heard this term QUIMBY.
Oh, yeah.
This is a new thing to me. Although for a long time in Portland, I lived in the neighborhood where Beverly Cleary lived, and so there's like a Quimby Street,
Yeah.
but QUIMBY, right? Not QI. So yeah, it's an interesting question because like your neighborhood fabric, like in the established neighborhoods that you have in the core of the city. I often think people hear the word density and development, and they visualize like a bunch of single-family homes being torn down and huge apartment blocks being built in their place, and it's not really the way it happens. And we have the same, I don't know, like every city has these same kinds of conversations. Sure. It's really about finding opportunity sites where there's underutilized land, or oftentimes, I don't know, like we live in a different world now, like especially older cities that maybe grew up around manufacturing industries, where you may have industrial zoned land that isn't utilized the same way it was 50 years ago or 100 years ago. Like I love areas like that. Like I enjoy, I don't know, like I went down to the warehouse district and I went to the distillery district. Like I love adaptive reuse of old industrial stuff. But at the same time, there's an opportunity to rethink those spaces and like do the structures that have been around for hundreds of years, or maybe the vacant lots where industrial structures once stood, are those opportunity sites for kind of the infill housing that we need. Because walking around established neighborhoods like, I don't know, like Chevy Chase, or it's like I'm not seeing huge opportunities for infill in a lot of places like that. So like it would kind of drive me crazy to hear that like that local residents would be concerned about like their neighbor's house being torn down and being replaced with an apartment high rise or something like that. I just don't think that's the way it works. But again, like I'm all about trying to grow understanding and enthusiasm and a constituency of people who really value cities and the things they're actually good at. And to me, what they're good at is accommodating a diverse group of people to live in a smaller space like than you would out in the suburbs, and actually make it function and enjoy all the benefits of that density brings. Like there's more stuff walkable to you because you've got a lot more people in like a walking catchment area of like a shopping district, right? You can have more stuff. People will want to open businesses because you have a lot of people there. I don't know, like just all kinds of things like, or like infrastructure, right? Infrastructure is more economical if you don't have to build as many miles of like a water main or a sewer line or electrical or whatever. Like I don't know, like cities just help things function better. So I'm just kind of all about helping people be aware of that, and that maybe understanding that on like a logical level will help them be a little bit more supportive or open to good proposals for new density.
Absolutely, and I think that's a key part of it. We talked a little bit today about the challenge of being a university town, and especially having a university that borders our downtown. And I think that's where these questions and tensions and development come in to these older historic neighborhoods. Have you seen other cities, or can you think of an example of a university city that may be comparable, that is working through, how do we continue to house not only community members that are not students, but also students, or anywhere that you've seen kind of tensions in trying to navigate how housing happens in kind of urban cores and downtowns to balance the, again, community members and students?
Yeah. I mean, when I think of cities that are comparable to Lexington in that way, where it's a city, like it's not what you would call a college. To me, a college town is a city of maybe, I don't know, 50 to 100,000, right? Where with a big university that might have an enrollment of 30 or 40,000. I don't know, like College Station, Pennsylvania, or like Ames, Iowa. Those are kind of more like college towns to me. Lexington's kind of more in this middle ground where, like, the comparables for me are like maybe Madison, Wisconsin, or like the one I'm most familiar with is Eugene, Oregon. It's a little smaller than Lexington. I think we're talking like a couple 100,000 total in the metro area, but they've struggled with a lot of those things too for a long time, because the University of Oregon is, I don't know, it's a big campus, but it's fairly close in to downtown. It's probably about the same distance that the University of Kentucky is from downtown Lexington. And they have a lot of those tensions. I mean, one thing they've done is they implemented bus rapid transit starting. It's one of the first ones in the U.S. actually. I think it opened in probably around 2009 or 2010 or so. It was after the Cleveland Health Line. I think that was the first one. But that gave them, they had like a coordinated land use and transportation plan where, okay, we're gonna have these stations along the bus rapid transit route, and there's gonna be a lot of traffic between the university and downtown, but we'll also have stations where we can build infill dense housing as well. And still, like, there are always tensions, right? There are people who want to live in the Eugene, Oregon of 50 years ago, and I empathize with that a little bit, like, but it also, like, it's literally impossible to do that. We just don't live in the same world anymore, and so it's just always, I don't know, like it's always a process working with. I don't know, working with the community to get buy-in and working with elected officials and, like, I don't know, electing the people who you think will help the city grow the right way. So yeah, like, Lexington is not by any means alone in facing those challenges.
That's a great kind of lead into the transit conversation. I think you mentioning Eugene as being somewhere that got bus rapid transit. Anyone in this room passionate about bus rapid transit? I had a feeling there might be.
That's wild.
And that has been, a big topic here in Lexington. We did our Imagine Nicholas Hill Road study. They are currently studying the feasibility for bus rapid transit on Nicholas Hill Road, which you had an opportunity to experience. So I think that's exciting, and I think it's exciting to look at Eugene as an example of again, a university. I'm not giving Lexington enough credit by saying university town, am I? A university city to say, here's what it could look like. And I think that is really exciting because we know how vital transportation is to affordability, to housing, to density, all those different pieces.
Yeah, and also for college students, right?
Absolutely.
Because they're often living without a car while they're in the city, and
right.
they need places to get around. Often, sometimes they have a job they have to go to as well. So I don't know. Colleges present a lot of unique. I would just say I would put it that they present a lot of unique challenges and opportunities.
No question. Who in the room uses transit here in Lexington? All right, there we go. That's great. And that's another reason I think that having you here is exciting, as you mentioned, to really kind of build that culture and groups of people, of advocates for these kinds of issues, and advocates for transit, to advocate with our elected officials and to make that a reality for Lexington. So I think we're excited about those opportunities here and what that could bring us. Do you have any, cities that you can think of that you've been to or researched that are making big improvements to their public transit infrastructure, and what can we learn from them?
Yeah, unfortunately, like it's a really tough time right now in the U.S. specifically, not just because of like the political environment or federal funding or whatever, which is an issue, but like it's so expensive to build stuff these days, even BRT. So like the last project I had before I quit and started making YouTube videos was I managed the design during the construction of Portland's first. It's not even BRT. I think they call it enhanced bus now because they watered it down so much that it doesn't really even qualify for the definition of bus rapid transit anymore. But it's got a lot of, they bought, weirdly, Portland didn't have any articulated buses at all in the entire TriMet fleet. Wow. until they implemented the division line, which opened, I want to say, it actually opened the same year I quit. It probably opened like 4 months after my first YouTube video, I think. So I quit my job, and then like later it opened. It was fine. But yeah, what was the question?
Just thinking about examples of cities who, maybe
that are improving.
Process.
Yeah,
that are improving transit.
Right. Yeah, and I'm struggling with that. Yeah, because I was gonna say like that was like a $200 million project, and it was really like there's no rail, there's no dedicated, there's no like fixed guideway, anything like that. It's all like platforms on a street that already exists and some paint, right? And that's $200 million. Yeah, and like light rail is like billion. I don't know. Like the next light rail line they want to build in Portland is up to, I don't know, like a couple $2 billion now, and it's just like the funding. There's no funding coming from the feds, and they weren't able to pass the regional bond measure they wanted. But I don't know, like Portland's not unique at all in that way. Like a lot of cities are struggling with that because the cost estimates for these projects keep going up because of whatever. There's a lot of literature out there right now on why the U.S. is things are so disproportionately expensive in the U.S. compared to other countries. Yeah, and then federal funding. Like it used to be, I think when I got into planning, like it was oftentimes the feds would pay 80% of like a light rail project, and that's how Portland was able to build out its network early on. And then the last project they did, I think they only got like 40 or 50% from the feds. And so, yeah, it's just a tougher and tougher environment in the U.S. So that's a long answer. Where I would like is in Canada. That's kind of my answer.
That is, yeah.
Yeah, I went to Edmonton last year, which is actually the first place in North America that built light rail, which I think is interesting. But they do a lot more. They have a good bus system too. They have high ridership. They figured out how to get things done politically, and it's really about because if you look at like the service and the networks they have in some of these Canadian cities, and I'm not talking about huge cities, I'm talking about like Edmonton and Calgary and Ottawa. These are like metro areas of like 1.5 million, maybe, not even 1.5 million, I think. So really, I don't know, like Louisville size, right? But they've built a culture and a constituency for funding this stuff at the regional level. Like they're when they go to the voters and say, hey, do you want to tax yourself to have a new transit line or better transit service? They're able to get that done. And you do see that in some US cities. Like Seattle passed a big regional bond measure. They passed Sound Transit 3 a few years ago, but it's taken forever to build it out because the cost estimates just keep going up. LA passed a big transit measure too, so it can happen. But yeah, I think it's almost more of a cultural thing than anything else. Like, people have to get on the same page about the value of transit and the impact it can have on their lives, even if they don't specifically take it, like the way it can make your city function better.
I think that makes a lot of sense and is really important, I think, for all the people in this room who, are either currently advocates or future advocates for transit. The fact that it really is this cultural ask of groups of people really advocating for improvements in our transit networks. And I think, too, it makes me think that we have to build that now, even though we know that federal funding is virtually non-existent for these projects, so that when funding becomes available, we're ready to take advantage of the opportunity. So I think, that's our opportunity now, is to really build this culture and group of advocates in our own community for transit, so that when the opportunities come back, which hopefully they will, for federal funding and matching and things like that, we can be ready for that opportunity, which I think makes a lot of sense. What about, and you touched on this, and I think the Oregon examples you used, I believe was Portland, about the transit-oriented developments. Could you talk a little bit about, what you've seen be successful and just kind of why those transit-oriented developments are so important to creating the housing choices that you mentioned before?
Yeah. So, when I was consulting, I would often end up doing like station area plans for new light rail alignments that were about to get under construction or I don't know, or were in design or whatever. And so the station area planning was always it always had like a zoning component to it, and it had like an urban design and like street network component to it, because you always wanted to build. The whole idea is that you can leverage transit to build places that are maybe denser and less car dependent, because you're offering people a high quality transportation choice, and so that people who live there, they have the option to drive. They can certainly drive if they want to, but taking transit is going to be very appealing, and you want to build a walkable community too. You want people to have options other than driving a car. And by the way, so Lexington got rid of parking minimums. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Woo!
Nice, because that's a big deal too,
Yeah.
right? Like, if you go to like, I hate to slag other cities, but if you go to Phoenix, like, their idea of transit-oriented development is, like, they build, like, you might have like a residential high-rise, but it's probably taller than it should be because it's got like 8 floors of parking on the bottom. And so, like the idea with transit-oriented development is that, like, parking is optional. It's kind of up to the developer. It should be up to the developer to decide how much parking they think they need to be able to sell apartments or condos or whatever. They're the ones who know, right? Like, we'll just let them do that. Don't dictate to them how much they need to do. Let them decide what works better. That's kind of the idea there. And so, transit-oriented development. Sometimes it happens on a frustratingly long timeline. When I got into planning, there was an area called in the city of Beaverton, which is kind of like the first major suburb to the west of Portland, where the Blue Line Max goes right through. They had a big opportunity site where they placed a station, and they called it, it was right by downtown Beaverton, which is kind of its own thing. It was like the next station out. They called it the Round at Beaverton. It was kind of this round development area with like a round building that they got halfway through constructing, and that sat there. It was like a shell for literally like 8 years or something like that, because we had the housing downturn, and then it wasn't penciling out. And so it just kind of sat there, and you kind of thought, this is ridiculous. Like, we invested all this money in light rail, but they're not actually building the density. But it was really about macroeconomic conditions, because if you went there in, I want to say starting like maybe 2015 or whatever, they restarted construction and they finished like the main building, and then they started building out a bunch of other stuff. Now if you go there, it's actually working the way it was supposed to in the first place. So it doesn't necessarily happen right away.
Yeah.
Like it still depends on like external economic factors and things penciling out for a developer. And also, I don't know, the culture change. Like Beaverton's different from what it was. I don't know, like I'm saying Beaverton, a lot of you may not be familiar with the place, but it's not like a super wealthy. It's probably a little bit above average as far as like income levels. Like, you know, Nike is out there and Columbia Sportswear and stuff like that. So they're good, like high-paying jobs out there. And it kind of came up in the middle of the last century and probably the late maybe 70s, 80s, 90s. As kind of like more of a typical suburb with a lot of single family. And now it's kind of unrecognizable in the central part of the city. There's like big food truck parks and high-rise residential in the center of the city. And it's just kind of a matter of, again, I think like the culture changing around and the way density is perceived. Like now, like people who live in the single family zones, they all go down to downtown Beaverton because there's so much going on there now because there's so many people and so much activity all the time, even going till late in the night. And so they're like, I don't know, there are a lot of amenities and shopping and dining options that just didn't exist before that are enabled by transit-oriented development.
No, I think that's so important to remember, because I think sometimes that question here is, and this is a little bit going back to the bus rapid transit question too, you know, what comes first? We've got to get the density on some of these corridors to make the bus rapid transit worth it, and it's definitely a mix of all those things happening together. Do you think, you know, one happens before the other, or it just really depends?
Yeah, it all has to be coordinated.
Yeah,
it really has to be at the, I don't know, for Portland, it kind of happens at the regional level too, right? We're not gonna invest all this money in a new transit project unless we're able to rezone areas or do infill around the stations, because otherwise we're not really getting the benefit out of the project that we should. Like the whole point of it is to create these travel opportunities and generate these nodes of activities and give people housing options they didn't have before.
Well, we're coming up on time, and I want to make sure that we get to our audience questions. So I will just finish up with a quick question before, and then I want to talk about what your experience in Lexington was, and maybe some highlights, maybe some lowlights, hopefully more highlights than lows from Lexington. If you had, you know, a magic wand and you could change one thing here, whether it be a policy or a specific project that you think would transform our community, what would it be?
Oh, you know, I hate questions like this. Like, I just don't know enough about you. I don't pretend to know enough about your city to be able to make determinations like that. But I don't know. Like, I'm in favor of building on strengths and building on the things that make your city unique and make Lexington Lexington. And I don't know, that's what I kind of wish every city would aspire to, right? Double down on the things that make your city unique and interesting and make it what it is and make it a place that people love, right? So for me, I don't know, it's distilleries. I don't know.
Love it.
I don't know. Like, I think the distillery, like, I love adaptive reuse, period. I don't know. I'm not saying build a bunch of new distilleries, but yeah, like I'm a big fan of the adaptive reuse of kind of old industrial sites, or maybe not even adaptive, but kind of reinvigorating them and bringing back some of the glory of the city's history in some way. I don't know. Like, I'm a big fan of all that. So
I think that is an excellent way to wrap this up. I know that you had some highlights, and so I'd love to. I'm excited for you to share with the audience what your takeaways from Lexington were.
I need a clicker.
What are our strengths that we can double down on here?
I like to do this at the events I do. Actually, I've only done it a couple other times, but I kind of realized it's usually, or it gives me a way to kind of structure some of my thoughts about what I've seen as I've walked around the city. So I don't know, like I like to do a top 10 list. That's just kind of my favorite format. So, yeah, we got highlights from Lexington, a top 10, and so just like first of all, like the horses everywhere are pretty notable. Like not only the like the statues and things like that, but the way they show up in the iconography of the city and the local businesses, I just think is super interesting. And like they're on your flag too, right?
Right.
Yeah, they're everywhere. I don't know. Like again, like I guess you could perceive it as corny, but I also think it's important to the city's identity too.
Exactly.
All right. So top 10 list. So this first one is. What we got? Oh, I can't even see it. Yeah, one thing that was noticeable was like blue is a theme around here, I would say. I don't know. So this is South Hill, right? And I noticed, like, I was walking the first morning, and I thought, so there's a lot of like brick, like not townhome, but you know, there's a certain kind of like architectural vernacular, and I started to realize, wow, a lot of these are blue. So I don't know what the actual like RGB value of this blue is or whatever. It's not the same as like the University of Kentucky logo. That's darker, right? But it was really noticeable to me. So I don't know. That was a hit for me. I was like, oh yeah, blue brick houses. I like it.
I will admit I didn't even think about that. I immediately thought, well, UK, but that's interesting about the different varieties of blue.
Or like blue grass. I don't know. Like I'm not,
right.
like there's a connection there, but I'm not sure with the. And then like okay, you have to explain this. What does that mean?
All right, this is Bluegrass Trust.
Oh, Bluegrass Trust.
Yes,
okay.
So it recognizes our
I figured
historic
it was Bluegrass
homes and properties.
Something. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Oh, you guys recognize this place, most likely.
Yeah. Woo.
Yeah.
Great adaptive
Yeah,
reuse project.
I walked out there. Oops. And I didn't expect what I ended up seeing. I went on Sunday, and it was insane. I kind of thought, okay, it's Sunday, whatever it is, probably won't be that happening. They had like some sort of like pop-up, not even a pop-up, but there was like some sort of like consignment fair going on, and there were huge lines to get into it, and I don't know, the place was just popping at like noon or whatever. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, people seem to dig this, and like you walk outside, and there were people like crossing the street in every direction to come hang out or whatever. So, thought it was cool.
Lexington showing off for you.
Yeah. Next one. Yeah. I'll get to that. So more adaptive reuse, right? The warehouse district. I have to comment on this because I was warned. Yeah, we have like the largest like peanut butter factory in the world or something like that. I don't know.
We said it might smell a little bit like peanut butter if you're lucky.
Yeah, and so I kind of knew where it was by the warehouse district, and I was like, well, I don't know. I've heard that this place might smell, like you might notice it, so I didn't really notice it. And then after walking around for like another 20 minutes, it's like, oh yeah, oh, I do smell that. And like full disclosure, I'm a huge Jif fan, so like I could literally like open a jar of Jif and probably just eat it straight for.
That's why you really wanted to come to Lexington.
And then all the
Just
amount
worked
of time.
out.
But the smell doesn't exactly smell like peanut butter, but also, I don't know. How do y'all feel? I don't know, like, I found it not unpleasant. Yeah. There you go. Anyway, I'm into it. Oh, yeah, and like what's the name of this neighborhood?
This is Kenwick.
Kenwick.
I recognize this photo.
I've never seen this before. I mean, I'm aware of like disc golf. Unfortunately, in my professional past, I've done like disc golf traffic studies, which doesn't actually exist in like the ITE trip generation manual. You have to actually figure out your own methodology for it. Maybe it does now. I'm not sure. But anyway, when a disc golf development came up, I had to like send out people to like count parked cars and like how many people were using it and stuff like that. Anyway, I'm not a huge disc golf person, but I thought having this place, this is right in like the planting strip in front of somebody's house. It had a bunch of Frisbees in it. It's like, I don't know, it seemed like an open invitation to just start working on your game or something.
That's right. Well, something you said struck me. I mean, I actually walked, I know exactly where that was. I realized that I walked by that with my dog. And something that you said struck me because you said it just felt like those little things we see but don't see every day are actually help build community. Because it is an open invitation, and how, you know, these and our pocket libraries and things like that really do build that feeling of welcome. And
yeah, like it's almost like the homeowner here or whoever, it's almost like demonstrating, hey, like I kind of care about whether you're having fun or being interested while you're walking down the street. Like a lot of neighborhoods you go to, like they might not want you to walk through their neighborhood at all, right? And this is kind of like more like, hey, welcome, play some disc golf while you're here. I just thought that was cool. I've never seen that before. I see every city has a little free libraries. That's no big deal.
Yeah.
But disc golf, like right on the sidewalk.
We're unique.
Just amazing. Just amazing. What's next? Yeah, so another thing that came up in my planning career often is like you would propose stuff like this, like tunnels underneath overpasses or punch through like rail embankments or whatever, and it would be hard to convince people that it wouldn't be like a dark, dreary, crime-infested, scary place. And so like I always like to take pictures of these when I'm out walking around, just to kind of remind myself and have documented, oh yeah, they're interesting, fun ways to do like these underpasses that make them kind of like cool to walk through or make them inviting or whatever. And so what's the name of this park?
Do y'all know where this is?
Yeah.
Woo.
Which is relatively new, right?
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. Yeah, I got to walk through it.
August 25.
Yeah, I walked through it on like Sunday evening. I don't know. It was cold out, so there wasn't like a performance going on or anything like that. Like the little bar wasn't open or whatever. But there were lots of kids out using, like that was a cool play area.
Yeah.
Like if I was like 7 years old. Actually, I was about to go down the slide right now.
Yeah.
I'd still be into
Missed
it.
opportunity. There's still time.
Could be.
There's still time.
What's next? And another underpass. So yeah, like I walked up to the Distillery District. And this is something that came up a couple times in my planning career too, like how hard it is to get facilities like the two-way, like protected bike lane or any kind of multi-use path, or to widen right away, like under a railroad structure. Like it's almost impossible to work with railroads. So I kind of get it. Like there's a place right here, I didn't take a picture of it, but where, yeah, you can kind of see it right where the sidewalk ends. Like you have to walk into what was the bike lane and it becomes a shared facility at that point. So like I'm totally sympathetic to that. At the same time, like, I don't know, I found that corridor like very inviting. There's a lot of interesting stuff to see on the way up, and thought it was cool. What's next? Oh, yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the idea of slowness, and what I really mean is slowness in terms of traffic. So my video that's coming out on YouTube tomorrow that I released on Nebula a couple of days ago is about freeways that are in the middle of US cities that we really need to just get rid of because they're redundant, or like there's too much opportunity cost for having them where they are, and they create noise and health problems and connectivity issues, like all the things that are terrible about urban freeways. And they exist in just about every American city, I don't know, like over 1 million or whatever. And I was trying to think, I haven't actually done this analysis, but I'm trying to think, what's the largest US city that kind of doesn't have a freeway running through the middle of it? Because Lexington's going to be up there,
question.
Right? Because the interstates are way off up to the northeast, right? And so not having, and I think I talked about this earlier, but the fact that you don't have freeways running through the middle of your city, like so many US cities do, that is such a burden on like connectivity and noise and pollution, I think is a huge asset for the city. And it's amazingly cool that whatever battles happened when those interstates were constructed didn't result in them being driven right into the center of the city. I think that's a big deal for a lot of reasons, and not the least of which is you don't have drivers driving around who are racing to or from a freeway ramp where they're going to be driving like 70 miles an hour, right? You get off the freeway and all of a sudden you're in a 25 mile an hour zone. Like, you don't drive 25 in that situation. You're driving faster because your brain is kind of sped up. Like, that kind of accelerative effect kind of doesn't exist here. And not that I didn't see some people driving fast, but then the other...
We know that happens, don't
Yeah,
we?
the other piece is, like, I saw these signs everywhere where everything's 25 miles per hour, right? Except for, like, unless signed otherwise. And there are, of course, streets where it's signed otherwise. And there are other cities that do this, but not very many. So I just found that between there not being any freeways and having this 25 mile per hour everywhere idea, I found that to be, I don't know, it contributes a lot to your sense of safety and comfort when you're walking around. Like, the city moves slow in terms of traffic in a good way. Like, oftentimes there's like a negative connotation to that, like, oh, it's congested or whatever, or people are lazy or something like that. But it's a positive, right? When I don't know, like, there's all the studies about, you know, what happens when a human body is hit at 35 miles per hour versus 25, that kind of thing. And so for a lot of reasons, like, I just thought this was great to see in a city like this. What was that? This is number 3. What's left? Oh, and I just like this picture. That's all.
It's a good view.
Yeah, well, it was Sunday, and yeah, the light was so pretty at a certain time. I took a lot of pictures like this, like, oh, the light is just perfect, and it was hitting like these old structures up in the distillery district. So yeah, I enjoyed it. Yeah, I don't know if everybody's a fan. Like there's some probably corny aspects to it or whatever, but there's a lot of cool stuff to do up there, and I just find this kind of architecture really kind of evocative.
And I think you drove home too. And I think Lexington has a plethora of places like the distillery district that were industrial areas that have started to turn over. And I think this is a great example of, you know, I used to drive by that and would have never have imagined what it could be now. I remember seeing the building that was the break room way before. It's the bar that overlooks the creek.
Yep.
And, you know, it's hard to imagine until you see something like this. Sometimes it is really hard to imagine what it could be. And everyone would say it's way too expensive, it's way too hard, that could never be anything else. And then you see developments like this and you think it could be so much more.
Yeah, and were it reminded me a little bit of the park as well. Were those creeks always daylighted or?
No,
okay.
They were not.
Even at the distillery district? Yeah.
Yes. Right by the distillery district, it was open there, but then in the park, they opened that all up. So,
Yeah.
And there's actually a creek that runs through all the way through downtown that's still under the cement.
Get it. And the last thing, so there was a news item, like, I don't know, a month ago or whatever. I'm not sure. I can't remember if it was like, I don't know, like Condé Nast or whatever, that listed Lexington in the top 10 food cities in the U.S. Did that make headlines here?
Oh, yeah.
Are people aware? Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. So I decided to go ground truth it.
It's our best example.
This was part of my transit adventure down Nicholasville Road. Actually, I needed something at the Fayette Mall, and it's like, luckily, the world's finest dining establishment was there.
That's the first thing Ray told me. I said, "Where did you go?" And he said, "I went to the mall." I was like, "Oh no, it's not how this was supposed to go."
That was it. That was me. So that's my top 10 for Lexington.
Top 10 Lexington. I love it. Well, Ray is actually going to be making a video. Can I go?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Is going to be making a video about Lexington that's going to debut later this spring. So we're going to be excited to share that with y'all, and hopefully you follow along on his YouTube channel too so you can see it. So we'll see. Hopefully he doesn't broadcast our Cheesecake Factory to the world and all your subscribers on the internet. But who knows? Well, thank you so much. We're going to dive into some Q&A from the audience.
Yeah, I did read that book. I have mixed feelings about it because, like, and we talked earlier about on the question about like which cities are doing transit well, and one of the things is like it's just become so expensive to build stuff, and part of the reason for that is the amount of process and planning and regulation there is, and so, like, I'm all for like revisiting stuff like that and trying to figure out what can be streamlined. But I'd hate to lose sight of like the fact that there were reasons that, I don't know, that we passed the National Environmental Policy Act, and there are reasons for like some of the process. But there's another book that I just finished. It's called Breakneck, and it's about the kind of the contrast between the Chinese culture of building things. Like they built more high-speed rail than exists in the entire rest of the world, and they built like Beijing as the world's largest subway system, and all this stuff was built in like the last 15, 20 years, right? And so they made the point that China is an engineering society. Like Xi is a trained engineer. Like most of the people who are in the highest political offices are trained engineers. In the US, they're all lawyers. Engineers are good at building things. Lawyers are good at stopping things from being built. That's kind of the thesis of the book. I don't know. Like I like lawyers. They're good conversationalists, right? But there's a lot of truth to that too. So yeah, like I think there is important stuff to be learned from like the abundance movement. Like that the movement exists for a reason. Like that book ended up, I don't know, like I think that sold over 200,000 right now, which is like a shockingly high number actually for a book that's kind of about a niche topic. So there's obviously a lot of interest and curiosity around those ideas, and I think a level of frustration that it is so hard to build things here. Like why is California higher speed rail so expensive? Why is it taking so long? That plays out. That's like the biggest, most high profile example, but that kind of thing plays out in every US city. So yeah, I would hope that we can find ways to revisit like a lot of the regulations that are preventing us from building as much like housing or upgraded infrastructure as quickly as we would like to. Yeah, you do see those things targeted. Well, interestingly, like oftentimes in college towns, right? Like some of the greatest examples of car-free streets are in places like, I want to say Boulder, Colorado, and Ithaca, New York, Charlottesville, Virginia. Those are all big like college cities where probably the fact that there's such a high population of people who aren't car owners and who do walk a lot. Like I'm thinking about like college students or young people who have recently graduated from college. Like that creates a constituency for that type of thing. And then the other end of the spectrum is like not necessarily car-free, but literal congestion zones, like what they implemented in New York a year ago. Like I don't know if I recommend that for Lexington. That's probably a heavy lift, but those are kind of the different ends of the spectrum. Yeah, I mean, it's always a matter of, it's like design and engineering and working with, I don't know, like you oftentimes have to end up working with like a traffic engineer. It's like, okay, but where is all the traffic gonna go if you do this? And oftentimes those rely on models with like kind of not fully baked assumptions in them. So I don't know, like I would, like I'm not sure what the right strategy to go about trying to advocate for those things in the US is. I would say that the city I visited in North America that just has really gone gangbusters on that is Montreal. And I'm not sure how much how transferable that experience is, because it's a, it's a different culture. It's kind of like the transit, like people in Canadian cities they just have a broadly a more different attitude about transit, and possibly the same in Montreal. Like, it's a big biking city. It's a pretty good walking city, but they've found a way to get political support for like a growing number of like what they call open streets, where they've removed traffic from the streets, and the businesses have ended up, I mean, I'm sure they were skeptical at first, like they are in US cities, but they're the opposite of that now, because what I find interesting is there are businesses that have like outlets on different like main streets or high streets in Montreal, and they literally saw that their business and profitability jumped on these streets where they did open streets and removed the cars. And they're like, oh yeah, can you do this on this street too? And when you've got the support of the business community, then stuff really starts happening. So I don't know if you're thinking like if it's residential, commercial, whatever. But yeah, like getting a pilot started and getting political support that way is the way to go. And it's tough at first, but once you get one kind of proof of concept working, the next ones get easier after that.
I think that brings up a good point too about obviously not only the continued culture and education and kind of crowd swell that's important to get some of these projects, but the economic evidence that can help from businesses and things like that. I've heard, we're doing a downtown master plan, and there have been those conversations of there are economic studies that show, turning a street from a one-way street to a two-way street, can be really beneficial for businesses. And I think that's another great example of a tool that we as community members can use to advocate for some of those things.
Have you had Jeff Speck here? Yeah.
We have.
You have? Okay.
Yes.
That makes sense.
I didn't want to ask you about the one to two-way streets. Well, I did, but a lot of people, we have talked about that a lot. Yeah. Jeff talked about that too. Yeah.
Trying to think of, and it's hard to even like define mid-sized city. I haven't covered too many on my channel. I'm thinking like Santa Fe, New Mexico, San Luis Obispo, California. I'm not sure which other ones, but I guess when I've visited a city that's around, I don't know, like 250 to 500,000. Well, I guess the comp that I would make would be Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I did live. Now that's a little bit larger. Like the metro area is around 1 million. Albuquerque proper is like 700,000, I think. And so like, I don't know, it's all about having like a great downtown core, right? That's walkable. I think that's kind of non-negotiable. But then, yeah, like great neighborhoods you can go to visit that are well connected by transit and by safe and comfortable bike route. I don't know, like I'm someone who likes to bike a lot. Like maybe it's not for everybody, but I find that between biking and like the rise of e-bikes and e-scooters, like those are much more viable transportation options and probably less niche than what they used to be. They're more broadly accepted than they probably were like, I don't know, 10 years ago. So yeah, I think having facilities and corridors that like connect different, I don't know, like neighborhood centers that are good places to go spend time or to go get errands done or have good services. I mean, that's what I want to see in a city of that size. Yeah, I mean, I think it comes back to the idea of opportunity sites. And I guess I'm thinking of the bus rapid transit in Albuquerque, which is, I think was actually the only BRT that, at least in design, qualified for, I don't know, there's like an international organization that grades or gives like I don't know, medals almost to BRT designs. So gold is the highest standard you can achieve, and you get points for like, I don't know, like level boarding and dedicated bus lanes and the fare payments, like all these different variables. And so the way it's designed, it connects to an area called Uptown, which is, I don't know, it's probably like 4 miles east-northeast of downtown Albuquerque. And there's kind of like a big mall there, and they're like, I don't know, they're like kind of like big box stores, but they also had a lot of opportunity sites to do infill development there too. So it made sense as like the place to anchor the end of the BRT line. And so you're kind of in an area that was zoned and developed as kind of primarily commercial, and they were able to make that mixed use. And so it doesn't really abut or conflict with some of the more established historical residential areas that are closer in. So I just don't, I don't see those things as being incompatible with each other. There are definitely areas where you'll see more of that kind of tension as far as like, established historic neighborhoods with like single family versus density along the corridors that run through those areas. But like if you plan like the dense residential for those opportunity sites that are kind of in their own little world, then it doesn't create quite the same political tension. I don't know, like the history of zoning is pretty rife with misuses. I don't know, like I think there was an understanding that you want to separate residential from like nuisance industrial uses, and then I think it just kind of spiraled from there, where we ended up with this very prescriptive system where, okay, only residential here, only industrial there, only office employment there, only retail development over here. And then everybody lives far away from everything instead of it all being integrated together. So most cities still have that kind of code, right? That kind of zoning in their codes. You've seen some zoning reform, like Albuquerque's going through it right now, where they're removing like some of the use restrictions. I think Charlotte went through that with their Unified Development Code, I think. So I think planners are aware of those tensions and those conflicts, and so you're seeing some cities kind of repair the damage that strict Euclidean zoning has caused. But a lot of the damage is kind of already done, right, in terms of the way cities have developed. So it's kind of a lesson learned a little bit too late, but it is being learned. That's what I would say. Yeah, when I do these events, I often get asked kind of like detailed, prescriptive type questions about, what should we do to change this or do that? And the problem is, it's not really a problem. I think it's actually cool. But it's just like the challenges are different and the questions are different in every city. And it's really about, like I said before, like doubling down on the things that make your city what it is and make it different from everywhere else and makes it a place that you love living, right? And so like my message is like elect the right people, right? It's just that's because that's where it happens, right? If you don't have I'm sorry to go back to the Albuquerque thing again, but like so I lived in Albuquerque and I lived in Las Vegas, Nevada, for a couple of the years when channel was in its early stages because it was cheap to live there, and I could I could work on YouTube stuff. But I became familiar with like the advocacy scene in those places, and some zoning reform, like what we were just talking about. A pretty progressive zoning package got shot down at Albuquerque City Council last week, 5-4, and the four counselors who voted for it were all in like the inner districts and the districts that are along like the bus rapid transit lines that they have there, and the 5 who voted against it are all in lower density outlying districts where the reform packages that were proposed probably weren't going to affect them at all, but their I don't know, like some people kind of, they want to live in a city, but they don't want to live in a city, right? And I think every place is kind of like that. So yeah, like, I don't know, like flip one of those districts so it's 5-4 the other way. Like that's an easy thing to say, but yeah, build political, I don't know, build coalitions with like-minded people. Like come together in spaces like this and meet people who want the same things for your city that you do, and make a plan to figure out how to show up, and not just vote, but like show up at hearings where like legislation is being debated, or write letters, or just like everybody's got like a different skill for impacting like their local politics. Some people are good at speaking up at public meetings. Some people are good at writing. Some people are good at organizing. So like everybody's good at something. So, you know, find that Venn diagram between like what you're good at and what you care about, and figure out how to work with other people to kind of leverage that to get the changes you want to see implemented.